I felt that oftentimes people don't quite understand what psychotherapy is about. And oftentimes when people hear about psychotherapy, it sounds very technical, it sounds very theoretical, very abstract, in ways that it seems to have no practical human application. And so I wanted to talk about therapy as a place where we help patients face the lies they tell themselves that cause their suffering, so that they can learn to face the truths they avoided, and by uniting with the truth, that they find a way to live into reality and no longer have to suffer from their defenses. So I was really writing it for the general reader to get an understanding about psychotherapy in a very simple but understandable human way, and to really see how therapy is really not just kind of an abstract intellectual process, but it's a very direct human personal exchange, where we can be very direct with patients and helping them see the lies that hurt them, helping them see the behaviors they haven't seen. Because you see, patients who come to us for psychotherapy, they know they have symptoms, they know they're suffering, but they don't know what's causing their suffering. And what's causing their suffering are these little lies they don't see that hurt them. We call them defenses in the psychotherapy field. But patients, no one comes to therapy wanting to suffer. They know they're suffering, but they don't know what's causing it. So the therapist then can help them see these lies they tell themselves, because if they can see the lies, they can start to face the truth, and then they can deal with reality more adaptively. And so the book is organized around a whole bunch of vignettes taken from therapy sessions, where people have a chance to see very different and very common lies all of us use, and have a chance to see the kinds of lies they've been telling themselves. So as a result, a lot of people reading the book have said, oh my God, I see what's been going on in my relationship. Oh my gosh, I see what I've been doing with my boss. Oh gosh, now I see this denial I hadn't seen, and now it's making me face what I need to face. So in that way, I wrote it so people would understand the therapy process. I wrote it for the general public, and also for everyone who's really seeking. They sense that there's some truth that they're almost putting their finger on. And I wanted to give them some vignettes here that would help them see this truth they're trying to get to, because if they could recognize it in themselves, maybe even reading that book would heal them a little bit.
Okay.
And I can say on a personal level, the reason I did it, I grew up in a little village, and I had the chance to see a number of people who really suffered, people who made suicide attempts, people who were incredibly depressed, who were suicidal, and so on. And these were people who had no access to psychotherapy. They had no access to psychologists. You know, these were just working people. They would never think to go to psychologists, and there'd be no point, because there were none where I grew up. And I've always thought about these people I go back to, that I visit and live with every summer, because I wanted a book for them, how to speak to people who they might not ever have a chance to see a therapist, but could really benefit from a book that would help them think a little bit psychologically about their suffering, and hopefully get a little bit of relief. We oftentimes face unpleasant feelings, unpleasant situations, unpleasant, tragic interpersonal conflicts. And we face very painful facts, very painful emotions, very painful realities. And when the pain is too great, all of us will lie to ourselves to avoid the pain in our lives. So we all do that. If there's a painful emotion, a painful conflict, a painful relationship that's almost too much to bear, oftentimes we can rely on a close friend, and together we can bear that pain, we can bear those feelings, we can bear that reality, that painful reality together. And it becomes bearable because we bear it together. But if we don't have someone with whom we can share a painful reality, a painful feeling, painful situation, if we have to face reality alone, oftentimes it's too much to face alone. And so we lie to ourselves about a relationship. We lie to ourselves about a feeling as a way to avoid pain that has become unbearable. So a person may be angry with someone who was dishonest or unfaithful. And that can be so painful that they'll say, well, he'll be faithful the next time, or it only happened once, or it doesn't matter. And these are ways we lie to ourselves. We say, oh, it doesn't matter when it mattered. We say, oh, it won't happen again when it keeps happening. We say things, oh, it's no big deal when it's a big deal. And all of us tell ourselves little lies to avoid the pain in our lives. It's just human. And I think we're particularly vulnerable if we face great pain in our life, and particularly if we're facing pain alone without someone whereby sharing it together becomes bearable. You know, if we get used to just saying it doesn't matter, even though it does, we can be kind of addicted to our lie in a sense because it helps us avoid something painful. I mean, like some people take drugs as a way to avoid painful realities. They want to blot out the feelings or thoughts they have in their mind through drugs. When we lie to ourselves, our lies become like drugs. We become addicted to avoiding painful feelings. We become addicted to denying that there's a conflict in a relationship. We become addicted to denying that we're terrified, right? You know, if we live in a community where people are endangered, if we live in a community where people get killed, we can become addicted to just denial just to survive. But the problem is that if we engage in denial and we say, oh, a problem in a marriage or in a relationship is no big deal, in a way, we deny a problem, but just because we deny a problem doesn't make a problem go away. We can deny that reality exists, but reality doesn't need our permission to exist. Reality keeps existing as much as we deny it. So the problem is that when we avoid facing the truth, when we avoid facing reality, when we avoid facing our feelings, those behaviors will sabotage us, right? If we deny this is a problem, we sabotage ourselves. If we deny this is a problem, we sabotage a relationship. And so the only way we can turn that around, stop sabotaging our relationships or sabotaging our careers or sabotaging our efforts, the first step is that we have to see the lies we're telling ourselves and face the truths we tend to avoid. And to face the truths we usually avoid, we have to face a lot of discomfort because painful truths are painful. But in order to deal with reality effectively, first of all, we have to face reality. Sometimes people hope that we could have an alternate reality. You know, oh, things shouldn't be this way. They'll say, this shouldn't be this way, where that's like saying reality shouldn't be the way it is. But reality is the way it is, and it doesn't need our permission. It's not like the universe, listens. Reality shouldn't be this way, and then the universe says, well, we better change the universe so it fits your idea. It doesn't work that way, but many times we relate to our fantasy of how we think reality should be, rather just in face, wow, this is how reality is, and this I will have to deal with. I don't get to live in some alternate universe. I'm having to deal with these realities that are facing me now. I was just talking to someone earlier today where her mother had actually threatened to kill her when she was a child, repeatedly. And so she would continue to argue with her mother, try to talk to her mother, right? Now, if we face reality, we just have to face, wow, your mother is very, very ill. Your mother hates you, and your mother actually tried to kill you. Now, no one, of course, wants to face terrible truths like that, even though it's true. And she had to face it. Actually, my mother is really mentally ill. Now, in her fantasy, there's a hope, well, if I just explain things right, my mother will see reality. If I argue with my mother in the right way, she'll see reality. If I just talk in the right way to my mother, I could convince her to see I'm a lovable daughter, not someone she should marry. And so here we had to face the fact that no, your mother tried to kill you. And we had to help her face the reality then, because in a sense, by always arguing and trying to get the mother she wanted, she was relating to the fantasy mother she wanted, a loving mother. Who wouldn't want a good, sane, loving mother? It's a very understandable wish. But in her case, she was relating to the fantasy mother she wished she had, rather than face the tragic, real mother she actually had. And in that situation, you see, when she keeps pursuing the fantasy mother she wishes she had, that's based on hope, she would say. But I would say, is that hope or is that denial of reality? Oftentimes patients say, well, I have great hopes that she'll change. And we have to remind them, is that a realistic hope based on reality? Or is that really a kind of hope that we would call a denial of reality? And sometimes we deny reality because if we face reality, and for that woman to face reality, she'd have to face, I didn't get a good, loving mother. And given my mother's current illness, I may never have a good, loving mother. So, in a way, this so called hope is really a denial of reality. And the reason for the denial of reality is that if we face reality, we face loss. Oftentimes on social media, people will claim they're ideal. I have no conflicts. I'm always happy. Everything is always terrific. These are very understandable fantasies.
Sure.
Like you, I had wishes. I wish I could be purified. I wish I could always be happy. I wish I never would be angry. I wish I never had conflicts. Sure. All of us have that very understandable wish. Otherwise, we have to face the fact life is good, but a lot of times it's hard. And so all of us at times have a fantasy. I wish there was this alternate way of being where everything is easy and there's no conflicts and I'm totally in control. And since all of us have that very understandable wish, there are always people in the world and on social media who claim they have magically achieved this magical world, and people are willing to pay a lot of money to get that magical life, that magical possibility.
Yes.
But it is what we call denial through fantasy, that rather than face life as it is with the good and the bad, people choose a fantasy where somehow everything we don't like is excluded and we can just have this idealized world that is a fantasy that has never existed. But of course, when so many people suffer, it's very understandable that people would understandably wish, yeah, for some fantasy world where suffering didn't exist. I think part of it is also getting clear about what we can do and what we can't do. What do we have control over and what don't we have control over? Oftentimes in terrible situations, we face a difficult situation, but oftentimes the person thinks I should have control over this person's behavior, or I should have control over my workplace, or I should have had control over that driver who crashed into our car, or I should have control over tragedies. And I think oftentimes we expect way too much of ourselves. We expect ourselves to have control over events that no one has control over. And I think too, we have to accept. I think There was a writer who once said, Edward de Bono, he said, if we try to do the impossible, we fail to do what's possible. And I think a lot of times we have the suffering of life, and there's no way to get around that. But what happens is that while we have the pain of life, what hurts us most is the suffering we impose on ourselves through the lies we tell ourselves. Like, I should be able to do something I can't do. I should have control over something I don't have control over. I should have, let's suppose I have an unfaithful husband. I should have control over an unfaithful husband, right? Lies like this inflict a tremendous amount of suffering. And so in a way, we have the pain of life, but we can get rid of suffering that's caused by the lies we tell ourselves, so that we let go of these ideas that we should have control over certain events we don't, and to then be able to look at what we do have control over. A woman was telling me that her mother said, "You're a nobody. You're worthless. You're nothing." And I asked her, I said, would that be a thought? And she said, yeah. And I said, would that be a doubting thought? And she'd say, yeah. And I said, so was your mother asking you to swallow her doubts? Yes. And when your mother swallowed, when your mother asked you to swallow her doubts, is that part of what made you depressed, do you think?
Sure.
So in a way, sometimes we have to help people. Sometimes we'll ask, is that true? Is that statement true? Or, for instance, you're a nobody. You could say, is that true? Or would that be an act of verbal abuse? Is that true? Or is it an act of violence? Was this person helping you use your mind? Or were they telling you to just use their mind?
Sure.
So in a way, also, if you're facing the truth, there will be some pain, but there'll be some relief. Like when I said to this woman today, no, it's true, your mother tried to kill you. I feel much lighter now, she said. How come? No, whenever I told people like this, they couldn't believe it. They said, no, it's not true. What happens now? We face, yeah, your mother wanted to kill you. Yeah, what happens? She felt relief, because the rest of my family said it wasn't true. No, that's not true, and so on. But what we saw is that when we face the truth, there's a sense of relief. But when we're asked to swallow a lie in gaslighting, when we're asked to swallow a lie, we don't feel right. We feel sick. We start to feel depressed. We start to get confused. We can't think. So one way to think about it is, if someone is really telling you the truth, and it's a painful truth, it'll be painful, but it's going to be validating on some level. It's going to ring true for you, and it's going to be liberating. If someone is asking you to swallow a lie, you're not going to feel good. And the truth liberates you, but lies paralyze you. So if what someone is telling you is paralyzing you, most likely they're gaslighting. I'm wondering, what are the steps in someone being able to see their denial, and then what can happen? Yeah, because for instance, with this woman whose mother was saying, you are no good, you're a nobody, and that was obviously a lie. It was, in a sense, it was the mother's denial. The mother was denying there was anything good in her daughter. And we have to, is that true? Right? Is that true? Or would that be a form of verbal abuse? And then as we help someone see, oh, that's not true, that's verbal abuse, right? Then the person starts to feel less depressed. They feel lighter. And all of a sudden she began to feel angry, and she felt this hatred, and then she got very angry and felt this hatred toward her mother. But isn't that wrong? I said, is it wrong to feel hate when someone behaves in a hateful manner? Is it possible your hate is actually helping you protect yourself from verbal violence? What happens now if you let yourself just feel this hate, right?
Because
And her
so,
anxiety dropped. She was just stunned that it would make sense to feel hate towards someone who's behaving in a hateful manner. Now, is this the end of the journey? Of course not. Because in the end, we have to help her face that she felt tremendous anger toward a mother whom she also loved, that she had mixed feelings. But at this stage, we had to undo her denial that she felt hate. And that by being in touch with this hate, she suddenly felt this energy. She felt some clarity. She was able to think more clearly, and she could see how liberating this was, that we could face the truth together, and we could face, yeah, she had an emotion of hate. Not a problem. It's just a feeling. And then later in the work, then we would help her face that, yeah, she felt hate toward a mother she loved. There'd be these complex feelings. So it's kind of step by step by step as the scales of denial fall, and the patient can face more face the truth of external reality, but also internal reality, that she loved her mother, but also felt tremendous anger and hatred toward that mother, and begins to tolerate this complexity of feelings inside her. Well, some people, you don't have to feel anger, you don't have to feel hate, you don't have to feel sad. That's just a form of denial. That's just denial that masquerades as psychological advice. Yeah, if someone behaves badly to you, of course you're going to feel anger and hatred. That's just human. When you lose someone you love, you're going to grieve, you're going to cry. That's just human. We have these crazy ideas today that somehow you could be human, and that the way to be a healthy human is to cut off your humanity, cut off your rage, cut off sadness, cut off anything you don't like.
sure.
Well, you can deny your anger, deny your sadness, but you're still here. It'd be like me. Well, I'm going to cut out my brown eyes. It's just is bizarre. But these are very common fantasies that people offer, that you can have a good life if you just deny parts of your humanity you don't like. And it's just someone living in a fantasy world. It's it's just crazy. Of course, if someone has treated you wrongly, you're going to feel angry. That's just a normal, healthy response. And if you've lost someone you love, of course you're going to grieve. You're going to mourn for some time.
Right.
We oftentimes are trying to get rid of our humanity through lies, rather than learn to just embrace and accept our humanity, the livingness that's flowing through us all the time. It's like, I'm so powerful that I've totally cut off my capacity to grieve. But that would make a sense. I'm so powerful that I cut off my arm, right?
Yes. Sure.
It's a form of psychological castration. It's just crazy, right? But it's not an uncommon form of denial. It's a way to justify being a heartless person. It's crazy, right? Yeah, so I'm going to cut my heart out and smash it on the ground, and I'll say, that's what a man is.
I'm
Well,
sorry.
that's what a man is who's cut his heart out. It's a great example of socially accepted forms of denial. Many, many years ago, I entered my first psychotherapy. And in that first session, I said to the therapist, so how long is therapy going to take? It's an understandable question, isn't it? He said, well, it depends on your motivation.
Sure.
So, when we ask about therapy, we talk about therapy as if it's something, but really it's a relationship between two people. How, if we have a skilled therapist, really, whether therapy is going to help depends on how hard the patient works, how motivated they are to face what they usually avoid. So can it help? Yes, but we have to be willing to face what we usually avoid. The lies we tell ourselves are the ways we avoid the truth of our lives. Therapy is just how we face the truths we usually avoid. And if we face the truths we avoid, yes, we'll get better. Will we always get what we want? No, no, no therapy could ever guarantee that. Because, my desires have absolutely nothing to do with reality, right? For instance, I have certain desires about who I think should be the next president of the United States. That is not under my control. So I hope I'm happy in November, but I may be very frustrated. But to be in a more serious frame of mind, all of us have preferences about how we wish things would happen, and they don't. We could wish that our spouse did or said certain things. We could wish our children would go in certain directions. So there will always be a conflict between reality and what we want. There will always be the frustration. So the question comes over time, to what extent can we accept that reality is oftentimes different from our preferences?
Sure.
Sometimes people are shocked. How could that happen? How could I not get what I want, right? Well, because they were relating to their fantasy world instead of the real world, right? And some people can't tolerate frustration, so they try to tyrannically control people to get them to give what they want. And in these ways, then we no longer accept another person as a separate person with separate desires, separate wants. And then in a relationship, then we're negotiating how we are two people. We have separate desires, and how do we negotiate that while letting two people exist and tolerating the frustration in any relationship that, yeah, that our partner is not always our preference, and I'm not always my wife's preference, right? That both things are true. We've all had the experience of sitting with someone in a conversation. That person says, I know exactly what you mean. And you're thinking to yourself, oh my God. Right. Because you realize they can't possibly know exactly what you mean. It's not my wife's job to become me. It's not my wife's job to want what I want, because my wife is not me, and her wants, and as a result, her wants cannot be my wants. It's not my job to become a clone of my wife. I am not her. It's not my job to want what I want. It's my job to want what I want. So when we realize very fundamentally that another person is really a different person with a different mind, a different will, a different desire, different set of eyes, we realize, actually, although I know things about my wife, she's not me. And to a certain degree, since she's not me, I actually can't always know exactly what she's feeling, thinking. That in a way, my wife is always a mystery. She's knowable. Of course, I'm always coming to know her, but she's always unknowable. That no matter what idea or understanding I have, we could say, my wife is everything, is whatever I understand, but she's also everything that's outside what I understand. We could say that my wife is the excess that does not fit in any idea I have. So in a way, what is negative capability? Well, the poet Keats said, he said, can we accept sometimes when we're with another person that we simply don't know? And can we accept that we don't know without making stuff up? Oftentimes we have troubles just saying, gee, I don't know. And just letting that be and letting ourselves come to know over time. And instead, when we can't tolerate that we don't know, people start making up things about other people. They'll say, oh, well, he really wants that, or he's thinking this, or he probably wants that, or whatever. They're making stuff up to fill that hole, the unknown. Since they can't tolerate that they don't know, that there is this unknown, they throw a bunch of junk in it, false knowns, to fill up this hole of the unknown rather than tolerate, actually, I don't know what goes on in that person. I can't know what motivates them. Oftentimes couples get into trouble because they're just convinced they know their spouse. And actually, the key to intimacy is just realizing, actually, I don't know what's going on inside her. I need to turn to her. Actually, I don't know what's going on in my husband. I need to check in with him. Now, that can seem really depressing. I don't know. But on the other hand, insofar as your spouse is always, in that sense, a mystery, that's what intimacy is about. You're always going to be coming to know, coming to understand the closest people in your lives. And yet the closest people in your lives will always be a mystery to you. You'll always be a mystery to them. And just like in therapy, a patient is always a mystery to me that I'm going to learn about. And the patient begins to realize that when she thought she was a nobody or this or that, that was a way to fill in the unknown too. And she realizes, I will never know myself completely. I will even be a mystery to myself. I wish everybody could understand me perfectly. I wish my wife understood me perfectly. My wife wishes I understood her perfectly too. Yeah. But in a sense, it's like saying, I want my wife to be a mind reader.
Yes.
I want
That's
my
it.
husband to be a mind reader. Well, you know, I don't know about you, but I never got a class in mind reading, right? So, of course, we wish that somebody could understand us perfectly. And part of what we have trouble tolerating is that no one will ever understand us perfectly. But that people can understand us well enough that we'll feel touched and known, even, and then we have to accept the same time, no matter how well someone touches us, understands us in a certain way, their understanding is always partial. We never have total, complete understanding of the person. No one ever has a total and complete understanding of us either.
Sure.
And that's just life. It doesn't mean that anything is wrong. Otherwise, again, people suffer because they think I should be able to understand my spouse perfectly, which is impossible. Or we torture ourselves and our spouse. You should understand me perfectly. And, you know, we're offering our spouse an impossible job, which no one's ever been able to do. So in that way, it's oftentimes these lies like this one of denial and mind reading, that's a fast path to inflict tremendous suffering on one another in a marriage, giving each other an impossible task. Yeah.